Aloha, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. We're going to talk about Hawaiian and Indigenous religions this week. And I got through a few of the blogs last week, just kind of checking on giving you guys some feedback. So I'll go through a few more this week, and I'll kind of just do that every week, just kind of check in on three or four people's blogs and just keep going down. So you guys get a little bit of feedback. We will be doing a peer review soon. So try to get up to date on all your posts. So when we do the peer review, you have some good feedback on what you've written. So I wanted to start with just some religious terms that we can use as we're moving forward. So dualism, when someone speaks of dualism, they're really thinking of Christianity, which is God as one entity and the universe or creation as another entity. Those two entities. Pantheism, on the other hand, maintains that God and the universe are one being. So monism asserts that there is but one entity. God has no existence apart from the universe and never had. So you can see how these are closely related, but different. If we think about Hinduism, we can't really, pinpoint it as dualism or monism or pantheism because there's so many different sects of Hinduism and Buddhism and the other Indic traditions. Also in Christianity, you could perhaps find, and Judaism, you might find some that aren't dualism. Pantheism is more what we're going to be looking at today in the Hawaiian tradition and the indigenous traditions, where there's really no difference between the unknown and the unseen and the universe. They're sort of, one in each other. So this definition of pantheism says God, and if we're looking at Hawaiian religion, we would say gods and akua, which can be kupua or shapeshifters. Or Almakua, which are the ancestors. So as you can tell, these, even these categories are very Eurocentric, some people say Western, which is problematic because Christianity and Judaism come also from the East, if we really think about it. But I say Eurocentric. And so I don't know if they really apply to these other traditions, but we have to use, filters to think about religion. So just going through this thinking process is helping us to see the difference in religion and the cultures that we're studying. So some other terms you should know is atheism, which is no God, agnosticism, no proof of God, monotheism, one God, polytheism, many gods, pagan, belief systems outside of the mainstream religion or world religion, the religion of the other, the religion of foreign gods. So that word is kind of problematic when you have missionaries that come from the continental US to Hawaii, see Hawaiians practicing their indigenous tradition, which is the tradition, the religion of the land, and then they say it's pagan. Right? Because they're the ones that are actually coming with the pagan tradition. Christianity is the pagan tradition in Hawaii. It's the one that's out of the mainstream. So that's just kind of a funny thing to think about. But of course, the Christians are seeing the Hawaiian way of thinking and knowing, and their tradition as, the pagan religion, the foreign religion, because it's foreign to them. So, yeah, we're gonna go have a look things like images in textbooks for indigenous religions. Even this can be sort of problematic. And this is partly why I don't have a textbook, because there's so many different ways of looking at religion and different traditions. And depending on what perspective you are coming from, can dictate how you present or represent that tradition. And when we put it in a textbook, just like we put it in a religious book, it sort of becomes authoritative, right? The book says this. But there could be many views on that topic, right? So again, if we look at this image in the textbook, it says encountering indigenous religions and ways to tribal life. So what do we think of when we use the word tribal? So just think of that for a minute. What does that make you think about when I say the term tribal? And then the picture, right? The picture is something that we might think of as tribal, because they have feathers going through their nose, they have paint on their skin, and they're making fire with sticks. So is that really the way we want to think about indigenous religions? So here's just some comments. I'm just going to read the bold, mostly from students that I had in a previous Religion 150 class. And I asked them the question I just asked you. And one of the students talks about being born and raised here and went to Kamehameha schools, but talks about Hawaiian people in the third person, which is a little strange because to go to Kamehameha schools, you have to be Hawaiian. And they say, honestly, whenever I think of indigenous religions, I think about a group of people that are not very civilized, or should I say modern. I see them as African tribes with their faces tattooed and Native Americans chanting. Others, when I imagine indigenous religions, I thought of tribes in Africa nude with their faces painted and wooden knobs through their lips. It's something that is traditional and not something people from other places introduced to them or altered their religion in some way. That's a fair assessment to some degree. From my understanding, an indigenous religion is one where people not only share the same religious beliefs, but are also one from the same ethnicity. They're indigenous, they're tribal. So yeah, this kind of goes with those perspectives. And as we saw, the monks in India, they were nude, but they were very intentionally nude. And that was very purposeful, very much a religious practice, So if we look at the tribal, the word tribal, it can kind of come off as a bit of a bad word. It depends on what type of context is being used. But are modern Hawaiians who practice Hawaiian traditions tribal? If we look at the definition, which is right there, any aggregate of people united by ties of descent from a common ancestor, community of customs and traditions, adherence to the same leaders, etc. It seems that, yeah, modern Hawaiians are tribal, but they're not necessarily people who walk around with a feather in their nose, rubbing sticks together to start a fire. I mean, we have many Hawaiians at our university doing, traditional forms of education and also integrating both old and modern forms of Hawaiian religion, culture, and education into our education system, both to modernize and also improve it. For example, right now, Hawaiians are doing great work in the areas of film and animation to tell their stories and create modern literature. So in a sense, they're sort of progressive or maybe advanced in their use of technology. But in some ways, that use of technology is also sort of going back to older methods of storytelling that don't involve writing. So here's some modern forms of Indigenous people, and pretty much they're all protest. We have the protests of Mauna Kea and the protests of the pipeline, and you know, that's not necessarily a accurate representation of modern Indigenous people either, because we kind of get a view of them with a feather in their nose or protesting their lands. And we don't get a lot of just, hey, I'm a modern Hawaiian. I'm going to school. I'm, working. I'm a creative media expert. I'm, the top of my company at Amazon, and you can be very Hawaiian and do those things as well. And also make a big difference, perhaps, in those working environments by bringing in a different way of doing things.
Treaty land right now. How do you feel with them coming on treaty land? How do you feel in your own land of your ancestors? How do you feel? I feel disrespected. I feel hurt. I feel just hurt that these guys won't never understand. I try to tell them, but the only reason why we're moving back is because you're armed, batons, tear gas, riot gear, weapons, rubber bullets. That's what it takes for them to push us back. They carry weapons because they're scared. What does this land mean to you, this traditional land? That means everything. Look at over there, all the buffalo. Look at all the buffalo. Look at all.
Okay, so, this is interesting because these folks are having a protest and the buffaloes start coming, right? And so, you can tell they're excited. They, I can't speak for them, but I would definitely see that as a sign that, something is on my side and the buffaloes start coming. But that also would be a perspective that might be sort of frowned upon, maybe in some modern forms of even academia, right? Like that's nothing, spiritual. That's just a coincidence type of thing. And this reflects a view of people, Indigenous or not, where, hey, that's not. Like that's telling me something. The environment, the gods is telling me something. And if you're the type of person who doesn't believe that those things happen, you might not even notice the buffalo. You might not even notice that they're there. So it's an interesting, way of looking at the world. Another thing is, I feel like a lot of times Indigenous people, don't have the privilege of just saying, I don't believe in all that stuff. I'm an atheist. You know, I have my family, I have my ancestry, but I don't believe in the buffaloes showing up, or I don't believe in those gods and stuff. That's just, So I think it's the indigenous traditions. For me, as a haole who grew up here in Hawaii all my life, is it's very hard to, as a haole, be an instructor and try to give it a proper representation. So I'm trying to look at all the different sides. And a lot of instructors sort of see themselves as allies or sympathizers, and sometimes they take liberties that perhaps they shouldn't. So hopefully I won't do that. I'm trying to give a fair perspective. So yeah, more protest. What is indigenous religion though? It means native, intrinsic to an area, especially in the sense of peoples who originate and belong to a specific area. So ha'ole, basically, can be a person with white skin, but also mostly it means a foreigner. And the first people that came to Hawaii were white people. So that's why it has connotations of white people. There's also a term malihini that's different than haole though. And this even talks about a foreigner or newcomer, but even Pele, which we'll talk about in a minute, is Akua Malihini, a foreign god. Came from Kahiki, which is sort of the far off land where Polynesians thought they came from. But in this sense, it's considered foreign because they weren't native to the place where they came, whether that was Kauai or here in Oahu, or Hawaii Island, where Pele eventually laid her stake. So, in representing Hawaiian religion, Kaho'una Ola says, let us interpret for ourselves. Let Hawaiians interpret for ourselves. I think that's really important to remember, to try to read Hawaiian literature and Hawaiian commentary on Hawaiian religion and culture to get your perspectives. And they're not monolithic, or there's not one perspective. It's very much not like Christianity, which really isn't monolithic either. There's lots of different versions of Christianity, but the Hawaiian tradition doesn't have a problem with there being different views and different versions of storytelling and things like that. I think it's actually an important part of their cosmology. So, Aohe pau ka ike ka halau ho'o kahi. The understanding seen is not complete in one school. But please do not tell auntie, grandma, or especially great grandma that she is wrong. Whatever story she thinks, grandma is good to go. You just listen. But, we are trying to define Hawaiian religion in Western systems. So we have to ask, is it even a religion? And many Hawaiians say no. Do Hawaiians need to reconnect or rebind, right? So if we look at religion as binding, what are they reconnecting or binding to? They're already bound. Is their belief a religion? So rationalized religion is a religion not built in. People know they have that religion. Right? It's not really, it doesn't really matter where they are. It's a belief system they take with them. Traditional religion is a religion built into all aspects of life. People might not know they have a religion. Polynesian religion is both indigenous and traditional. So, traditional Polynesian religion is characterized by animism. Gods are part of the universe, not beyond it. All aspects of life have a powerful connection with the unseen. Organization of priesthood and cult varied widely. Sorcery and counter sorcery matters of life and death. Ancestral spirits are a living presence. So we're gonna go ahead and look at Pele. A lot of people have heard of Pele. She is an ancestor from Kahiki or Tahiti. So that may be the Tahiti that we know, but it's probably a place, a sort of mythical place that Hawaiians believe they came from. And Pele came and she tried to find a home in each island and found a permanent home at Halemaumau crater in Kilauea. She makes many appearances. I grew up on the Big Island, and I don't know if I've had appearances, Pele, but I've had encounters. I don't know. Anybody who doesn't have, doesn't believe in the presence of Pele, they at least respect the presence of Pele on the Big Island. And as just someone growing up there, you know, you learn stories. They're not stories that are written down in a book. When I came to the university, I read the Pele story. I read a whole bunch of other Hawaiian stories, but they're very different than the stories that I learned as I was driving from Kona to Kalapana, where the volcano is, and the reason we were going there was because there was surf. And it was, you know, don't throw don't eat pork and throw it on the road. And one day somebody did. They got a manapua and they threw it on the road, and the fog came, and this just later on, we were sleeping in our car because there was a contest there the next day. And then a guy came up to our car who had an eel attached to his hand. He couldn't get it off. There was blood everywhere. The next day, we went into the contest, and I was just learning to surf, but the waves were big, and Kalapana was called Baby Sunset. So I don't know if you know Sunset on the North Shore, but it was a pretty advanced wave, and I was learning, and my brother was watching me in this contest, and he thought I was going to drown. So a lot of things happened right after somebody threw that pork on the road. And so that's the type of stories that I grew up with. But, you know, these are academic versions of these stories that we're going to look at. So Pele is the fire. It's the volcanic activity. And then Hi'iaka or Hi'iaka Ikapolio Pele is the sister of Pele. It's in the bosom of the Pele. And Hi'iaka is that green, right? So it's this idea that something, you know, destroys or, you know, breaks down the earth, and then something restores it, you know. And that is the cycle of life, of the earth, right? So this story, this tradition is giving us an understanding of the way the earth, you know, is being composed on this island in a very local way, with local words and meanings. So that place where I went to have that contest, I believe that was in 1987 or 88. Probably 88 actually. And that was the last drain pipes contest, because in the next year or two, this is what happened. And so the place where I was surfing, where there was water and waves and an ocean, now looks like this. And then the last flow took the rest of Kalapana. So pretty much a lot of the spots I grew up surfing are now just lava, which is very different than Oahu. So on the Big Island or Hawaii Island, we're actually losing our surf spots to the composition of new land, right? And on Oahu, houses are falling into the ocean and we're losing our surf spots due to erosion because the streams no longer flow out into the ocean and the water is rising. So the reefs are no longer as defined and the water is getting so high that it's not hitting the reefs properly. And people are losing their houses. They're literally falling into the ocean. And then, 40,000 lava rocks are returned each year on the Big Island because, as the story goes, if you take a lava rock from the Big Island, you will have bad luck. Those rocks are Pele's rocks. They aren't supposed to leave the island. And so what happens? People don't listen and they take the lava rock and they get bad luck, right? So that they return the rock. Now, some scholars say this isn't a real thing. This was something that was made up. This isn't a real Pele story. I don't really believe that, because I lived there and, to me, it does very much go along with Hawaiian religious or cultural values where you don't just take something, you know, it's very different than the Western perspective is where you just go out, discover, explore. The world is your oyster. Take what you want, experience. In Hawaii, it's like, no, respect the land. That's not yours, you know. Maybe ask if you want to take the rock, you know. But yeah, interesting story. So I want you to just stop right now and read this little clip from Mary Kavena Pukui, who wrote the Hawaiian Dictionary and the Polynesian Family System in Ka'u, which is also on Hawaii Island. And Ku'ualoha Ho'omanawanui, who is one of the English literature professors at UH and of Hawaiian literature, uses it and writes about it in the beginning of her book. So I'm just gonna pause for a second and let you guys read it. Okay, so let us interpret for ourselves. That's why I wanted you to read that. So we're gonna look at we're looking at Mo'olelo. I was gonna have you read the story of Aukeli Nui Aiku, but I'm decided that we're gonna read a chapter of Isaiah Walker's book, The Waves of Resistance, which uses several Mo'olelo or Hawaiian stories to talk about surfing as a Hawaiian form of religion, knowledge, and culture. So, what is mo'olelo? You know, well, here's what it is in the Hawaiian dictionary. A story, a tale, a myth, a history, a tradition, literature, legend. It can be a lot of things. Not all stories were written. A continuous or connected narrative, a history, a tradition. And Marie Alohalani Brown, who is a religion professor, Hawaiian religion professor at University of Hawaii Manoa, says that Mo'olelo is carrier of culture. I really like that definition. So it's a good time to reflect again on this idea of myth. What is a myth? So usually, again, when we say myth, it's kind of like that word tribe. It sort of has maybe a not so good, stigma that goes with it. People take it as, oh, that's something untrue. That's something kind of ignorant, right? But it's really not. It's an idea or a story that is believed by many people, but that is not true. So that's one definition, right? Another would be a story that was told in an ancient culture to explain a practice, belief, or natural occurrence, right? So it's not the story may be true, but the point of it is to explain the practice, belief, or natural occurrence. So you can go ahead and read the other ones. So the Polynesian religions are part of the Polynesian Triangle. And Polynesia first emerged as a distinctive people around 1000 BCE in Tonga and Samoa. It's a Western term, meaning many islands. The native term is people, Kanaka, and that's the Hawaiian. So the gods are Tu or Ku, Tane or Kane, Tongaroa, and those same gods are found in many of the Polynesian traditions. So Hawaiian religions, I had a professor by the name of Nani Ka'aiali'i who worked at UH and other community colleges. Nani is Hawaiian, and so I thought her definition of Hawaiian religion would be important. It's an indigenous religion. There's no boundary between God and people. If the wind blows, I feel the presence of a God. Nature, it's a nature religion, a place religion. So Poliahu is the god of snow. She's attainable. I just have to get there. I can't tell the story of Mauna Kea if we're in Minnesota. So the god Poliahu is on Mauna Kea. It can't be moved to Minnesota. It lives in Mauna Kea. There's nothing supernatural about Hawaiian gods. They are not supernatural, just supernatural and natural. Yeah. Mana. So what is mana? You feel it when you feel it, and you know it when you know it. So, this is a more experiential or emic view, intertwined with, a scholarly view. So I find this really representative. This is Dr. Kapali Lyon's definition, who is a Hawaiian religion scholar and well-versed in the language. Mana is the essential power possessed by the gods, which can be imparted to things or people. Mana also exists in the forces of nature, particularly those not harnessed by humanity. So you can see how mana is sort of in everything, or it can be in everything. So these are stones. They have mana. The pohaku, right? The birthing stones and the wizard stones. So more from none. So the transformation from adolescent to adult, nothing has changed, but now I have new responsibility. Death is not so concerned about afterlife, but rather the present life. Sickness is not bad. Something evil happened. Medicine doctors help to get rid of the evil. The world was good, so you just need to get rid of the bad. We'll see in Christianity, it's pretty much the opposite. Magic is the attempt to control nature for your own benefit. Can you divert the lava from going into Puna? Right? The guiding principle is Pono. If you look on the state motto, it says Uamau ke'ea o ka'aina I kapono. And some people translate that as righteousness. And may the land be perpetuated in righteousness. But the word, if we change it to pono, may the land be perpetuated in balance. You know, that's sort of a different thing, especially if we're interpreting righteousness in a Christian type of way. So the restoration and maintenance of pono is a major focus of ho'omana, or worship, and proper behaviors, rites, prayers, and worship sacrifices can be used to remove hala, or offense, and restore pono. So Almakua is our personal and family deities who provided protection and guidance. So they're deified ancestors who take variety of forms. So they could be sharks, mo'o, or big lizards. It could be the volcano, a honu or eternal, and a pueo or an owl. So again, Almakua can be a kua or kupua. And we'll just look at a few of the Akua Nui, or the main gods, which is Ku, the god of war, forest, canoe making, fishing, and medicine. So Kane is the god of fresh water, sunlight, life. And Kane and Kanaloa, who is the god of deep water, ocean water, salt water, they kind of go together. Lono is the god of agriculture, clouds, weather, rain, and healing. Lono is the god of Makahiki, which is a festival from November to February. It's a peaceful time, and it's characterized by no sacrifice of pigs or humans. There's games, there's feastings, and there's periods of no work. You can see the calendar of Makahiki and the moon calendars, telling us what times are good for planting. Now, as the story goes, from some perspectives, Captain Cook was seen as a god when he first came. Some people say that's just totally inaccurate, but others say no, there's some support for that, because he showed up during the Makahiki, and then when he returned, it wasn't during Makahiki, so that's why they actually killed him. So and his sail looked like the Makahiki image. All the gods also have kino laos. So Dr. Brown says that These are nature forms which both symbolized and served as a physical expression for the gods. So in the story of Aukeli Nui Aiku, he has an Akua wife named Namaka o Kahai. She's the sister of Pele. Now, Namaka is also a kupua with many forms, including a cliff, the ocean, with mighty waves. She can be fire, and she can be an almakua for many Hawaiians. So just to rehash that, yes, this is a woman who walks around, who has a husband. She's on the earth doing earthly human things, but she can turn into a cliff. She can turn into an ocean or be a wave. She can be fire. And then she can be the ancestor who speaks to people in dreams or, in other ways. She doesn't have to be present in the person to speak to people. La'e is a fish who can change into a human and therefore a kupua. She's also the Akua sister of Halimano. In her human form, she is named Navahini Makai Kai, or Seeing Woman, a sorcerer whose pa'u's skirt has the mana to bring her brother's wife back to life. So, the He'eau is a place of worship where prayers, offerings, and sacrifices were made. So, Kapu and Noah are the sacred and the profane. And here is a offering at Pupukea. These are some heiaus on the North Shore, and that's where I live. And let me tell you, some of these heiaus are very, very, you can feel the energy. That's all I'm going to say. So again, did Kanaka worship images, right? Yeah, I don't think that's a good I don't think that's a good observation of what's happening. I don't think that should be seen as an idol. And also, it's also a place where, again, for the god to come in. So these statues are created. They're not worshiping the actual statue. They're looking at the statue and using it as a way to bring the god into the to the person, into relationship with the god. So heiaus are places of worship where prayers, offerings, and sacrifices were made to the deities. The kahuna are the specialists who are trained in religious medicine, canoe making, fishing, and healing, because those are all seen as part of it. Kapu and Noah are sacred and profane. Here's a lele offering at Pupukea. And these are heiaus on the North Shore where I live. And let's just say that they are very spiritual. All right, let's see. So just a timeline to give us more of a idea about how the religion changed. So what happened in 1820, missionaries arrived in Hawaii. So you have a human arrival from 0 to 300 BCE. Some people think that Hawaiians were always here, and then there's other different views of when they came. Captain Cook in 1778, but before that, you had Pa'au, who put in the luakini, or the human sacrifice, and set in place other parts of classical Hawaiian religion. Of course, in 1820, the missionaries brought Christianity. In 1848, there was the Mehele, so the redistribution of land. In 1893, annexation, World War II in 1941, and statehood in 1959. So let's look at Mauna Kea and the protests there, just as, another way to see how story ties in with the Hawaiian religion or the Hawaiian system. So the significance of Mauna Kea and why people are protesting there. It's symbolic of Wakea, the Sky Father. Wakea and Papa are an early cosmogony. They're the parents of some of the islands. They're the ancestors of all Kanaka or Hawaiians. Wakea is the male. Akea is the breath, and Papa is the female. So it's a mating of sky and earth that produced the islands. So the home of Mauna Kea is the home of the god Poliahu, and she is the goddess of snow, the enemy of Pele, which makes sense, right? Because Pele is fire and Poliahu is snow. It's also a residence of other gods like Lilinoi, Kuahau'ula, and Mo'oinanea, which is a lizard. It's home of Waiau, which is the highest permanent lake in the Hawaiian Islands. And many mo'olalos or stories, chants, prayers, mele, or songs are associated with Mauna Kea. So Hanau ka Mauna, the pico of our air. So the mountain is the center of our life. It's the center of our world. So bulldoze your own temple. So yeah, it's just showing the significance of this space as a religious place and a sacred place. So again, the hokulea, another form of Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian knowledge, and also surfing. So this is what you're going to read. You're going to read one chapter of the Waves of Resistance written by Hawaiian scholar Isaiah Walker. He works at BYU. He's the vice president. He's also a historian, teacher of history. He says He'enalu is significant to Hawaiians today because it is a tradition that continuously survived the destructive power of colonialism. So I want you guys to look at this and read this and try to pull out aspects of Hawaiian religion that could be seen in surfing. You could talk about, is surfing a religious practice or not? A form of knowledge, a form of literature, and Walker will sort of address some of these things as well. The other thing, if you could do, another option is to watch the movie Moana, which I'm sure some of you already have seen it, and I'm sure some of you have it. And think about that instead of, if you don't want to do the surfing one, look at the movie Moana, see how it represents Hawaiian religion and culture. And, if we look at it, we do see kupua, like shapeshifters in the movie. We see Akua, or demigod called the demigod of wind and sea. Should we be calling Akua a demigod? Or a god at all? There's Akamai, a hero of men. Should we be calling Hawaiian warrior or a Hawaiian character a hero, or is that sort of a Western term? and there's a demon of the underworld. And the story, is the story of Maui. So does it represent that story? So if you're familiar with that story, you could also pull that in. You don't have to. But those are the options for you guys. So yeah, I hope you're enjoying this lesson. And then next week we're gonna move on to the Abrahamic traditions. So I will see you next week. Hui ho.